I appreciate him so much for just being willing to give his time and take a few minutes with us, Mr. Weldon Long.
How y'all are? That's how we do it in South Louisiana. How y'all are? Very excited to be here. My privilege. I want to give it up first of all for Mr. Mike Melia. What an extraordinary human being. You got to love that guy, huh? The gracious and lovely and talented Kim Melia. And my dear friend and mentor and an inspiration in my life, Mr. Patrick Shaw. Patrick mentioned I want to apologize for the blue jeans and the casual wear. I didn't know I was speaking today. Was flying into Denver last night. My son, who many of you know, Hunter, turns 20 this weekend. This is his birthday. It was hard to believe, I know. And he's an extraordinary young man, and he's going to school here in Denver now. So instead of I live a couple hours south from here, south and west, up in the mountains. And instead of going on home and coming back today, Patrick was nice enough to let me stay at his house. It was interesting this morning. Patrick and Kim were getting busy to leave, and Julie was there with the kids and getting them off to soccer practice, and I was the last one there in the house. And so I said, Julie, you mind if I use a shower real quick, and I'll just lock up the house? And she goes, we don't really lock up the house around here. We don't worry about it too much. I said, well, what, do you have, a safe neighborhood? I mean, what, are you not worried? She says, Wally, you're the biggest threat to this neighborhood, and you're leaving, you know? So that's the kind of love I get from Julie Shaw. Thank you very much. For those of you who know Hunter and had the pleasure of meeting him and spending some time with him, he's doing extraordinarily well. And I'm finally to a point as a parent where I'm not worried as much as you are when they're coming up, because you never know for sure, right? And Hunter, like all young men, young women, has had some bumps in the road and through his high school years, and he's turned out the last couple of years just to be this extraordinary young man. In fact, I just spent 2 weeks on Maui, just me and my son and his girlfriend. I took him out, and we just spent a couple of weeks together, really spending some time, and me getting to know her. They're getting pretty serious. And there was a point in one night at dinner, I turned to Maddie, his girlfriend, and I said, Maddie, can I ask you a really personal question? She goes, yes, Mr. Long. And I said, what do you love most about Hunter? And she said, he's the sweetest boy I've ever known. And I'm going to tell you something, as a father, I don't think she could have said any more beautiful words than he's the sweetest boy I've ever known. You remember that scene from Forrest Gump? When he finds out he has a son and he turns to Ginny, and he turns to Ginny and says, is he smart? Right? And in that moment he realizes that his son is a better man than he. And it was that moment with dinner with my son's girlfriend that I realized he was a better man than his father. And I couldn't be more proud of him. He's an extraordinary young man, and I don't worry about him at all. Although, I must say, this morning I spent a few hours with him, and we're riding around town, we're getting some stuff for his birthday, and you don't want to just, barge into your kid and say, how's it going, how are your grades, that kind of thing. And so I just very subtly, after a little while, I said, so son, how's that school thing going? I mean, how's that college thing working for you? He says, well, Dad, some people just put way too much emphasis on grades. And I said, what? He goes, what is this whole thing with measurement and competing? Who's to say a kid with a D isn't as good as a kid with an A? I said, what are you talking about? You better get A's, you better get B's. And he goes, well, Dad, this whole measurement thing, it just seems so arbitrary. And I said, well, son, you're getting some birthday gifts today that are pretty expensive, some musical equipment that he needed for his little band. And I said, the reason that you're able to have that is because your father keeps track, right? Your father gets measured every single day. And we get measured in our business by the amount of income. Now, I'm not saying the income's the most important thing, and anybody who's spent any time around me knows that's not the case. It's all about my boy. It's all about contribution, like Kim was showing here. When Tony Robbins endorsed my first book, you know what the back of the book said? It said, congratulations on your contribution. He didn't mention the house in Maui. He didn't mention the expensive sports cars. What he said was, congratulations on your contribution. That's what it's all about. But we measure success in our business based on the amount of income we earn, right? What gets measured gets done. And so I told my son, I said, you need to be grateful that your father measures his success in dollars and cents, because that's why you have the opportunity that you have. But he's doing extraordinarily well, and I'm very, very excited for him. Everybody know what they want? I mean, this morning you spent the last 2, 3, 4 hours trying to figure out, what do I want? Everybody know what they want? Yeah. What do you want? What do you want in terms of the income, in terms of the measurement? Again, I'm not saying that's the most important thing. I'm just saying in terms of how we're going to measure our success in this business, all I'm saying is that we got to have a number. Does everybody have a number? Do you have a number the next 12 months, 24 months, whatever it is? Everybody got a number? Show of hands. Okay, this is the interactive part. All right? Does everybody in here know exactly what they need to do to earn that money? Right? We've talked about it all morning, and it gets down to a number of calls and numbers of conversations. Kim, Mike, they told you how to have those conversations, but at the same time, they can't be out there with you, right? We got to go out there and do it. So everybody have the number in their mind? Everybody know? So it's not a knowledge problem. You know what you want, and you know what you got to do. What's the only other issue it can be? An implementation problem. I've got a new book coming out in March, The Power of Consistency, March 5th. And the basis of the book is that it's not a knowledge problem in life, it's an implementation problem. Success is about the things we do, not about the things that we say we're going to do. And so everybody here today knows what they want. Everybody here has figured out the one or two things they got to do at the number of calls. So my job is to do what? All I got to do is get you to do it, right? They say sometimes I'm a hug and sometimes I'm a thug. Well, I've got about 20 minutes today, so I'm going to have to be more thug than hug today. Because my job is to initiate this action because you know clearly what you need to do. For those of you who don't know, many of you know my story. I've talked to several folks who have read my first book, The Upside of Fear. But for those of you who don't know, I'll give you the brief 25-cent elevator pitch. If you met me in an elevator and you said, so what do you do? I'd say, well, in 2004, I started a little company in the living room of my home. And in 60 months, I grew that company to $20 million in revenue. In fact, in 2009, my little company was selected by Inc. magazine as one of the fastest growing small companies in America. So what do? I teach other people how to do that. That's what I do. But the reason that my life story is a subject matter of that book and others is not because I built a $20 million company. It's because 18 months before I started that company, I was in a homeless shelter. I had 2 suits and a bus pass to my name. January of 2003, 9 years ago, at 39 years old, I'm in a homeless shelter, busted and dusted, right? And the reason I was in that homeless shelter is because that's where they send you when they release you from the penitentiary. I had just completed 13 years in state and federal prison. From 1987 until 2003, over that 15-year span, I spent 13 years behind concrete walls and razor wire, living the thug's life, as it were. Dropped out of high school in the 9th grade, never had a job, never had a home, never had nothing, had never done nothing good. And yet somehow walked out of the penitentiary 9 years ago and built a $20 million company, a life of success and wealth and integrity. How is it possible? Why does it matter to you? Because if I can figure out in about the next 15 minutes to teach you what I did, and then you go out and do it, what do you suppose is going to happen? You think you might make those 2 or 3 calls a day? Yes. Absolutely. So what happened? What changed? June 10th of 1996, I'm in the penitentiary for the 3rd time. 32 years old, high school dropout, 3-time loser, and got nothing on the ball. On June 10th of 1996, a cop walked in the cell house and kicked my rack and said, Long, you need to call home. Your father's died. And in about 2 seconds, the scales came off. In about 2 seconds, the eyes opened wide. And I realized that my father went to his grave knowing me as a thief and a crook and a dirtbag and a liar. And I decided on June 10th of 1996, I was changing the course of my life. I was changing the course of my destiny. And that's what I began to do. Problem was, I didn't know where to start. I didn't know the first thing I needed to do. I read this big fancy Chinese proverb that said a 1,000-mile journey begins with a single step. Well, I didn't even know what to do first. What do you do first at 32 years old, a high school dropout, 3-time convicted felon, never had a home, never had a job, never had an education, never had nothing? Where do you start? Well, you start with the basics. You start figuring out what successful people do, and you do that. You don't try to reinvent the wheel. You don't try to improve on their program. You look at what the successful people are doing, like the people you heard from today, and you just do that. And that's what I did. So I started reading all the success literature, the great thinkers, the great writers, as I like to say, from the Bible to Tony Robbins and everything in between. You start studying what they do. You study with these people up here today, Patrick Shaw and the Melias. You talk about what they do, and you go out and you do that. The key is, how do you do that? How do you get yourself? Anybody ever started a diet and kick its ass on the first day, right? You start a new diet. My thing is carrot cake, right? You all know this. My weakness is carrot cake, right? Because it sounds so much like a vegetable. It's very tricky. And And so you start the first day at my age. I'm almost 50 years old. You got to be careful about what you eat. You know, this doesn't come easy. I'll just be honest with you. So the bottom line is you got to be careful about what you eat. And so you start a new diet and you say, no more carrot cake for me, right? I'm done with the carrot cake. And that first day, what happens? You walk right past the carrot cake. It's not a temptation at all. In fact, you look at the people who are eating carrot cake with sanctimony and judgment and self-righteousness. Look at those weak people, those carrot cake suckers, right? You got this strength, you got this power. Then what happens on day 2? Well, damn, I didn't have any carrot cake yesterday. I mean, one little piece couldn't hurt. And by the third day, I'm filling a pie hole with carrot cake, and by the week later, I forgot I was ever on a diet. Isn't that the way it happens sometimes? That can't happen today, folks. We cannot let that happen today. We have a responsibility to ourselves. Here comes the thug part, just so you know. We have a responsibility to ourselves and to our families to go out and be as inspired tomorrow as we are today, and inspired the next day. How many of you are having the same conversation with yourself you've been having for a year or 2 years, about 3 years, about this is the year I'm changing it, this is the time, this is the place, and then we don't do it? What do you call that when you know exactly what you want, you know exactly what you got to do, and you don't do it? I call it the conundrum of human nature. Knowing exactly what you want in life, exactly what you got to do to get there, and not doing it. We got to change the doing, folks. And I'm going to give you a couple of very brief ideas in the limited amount of time we have. Simple ideas. So that you can keep the fire burning next Tuesday and next Wednesday and 6 months from now and a year from now. Because after all, if you felt every day of your life like you felt right now, how bad could you crush it? If you felt for the rest of your life every single day the way you feel right now, if you felt inspired and focused and passionate and clarity of thought and clarity of purpose, how much damage could you do out there? You could rule the world, right? So let's talk about how you get that focus. Everybody in here, as we mentioned, knows exactly what they need to do. They know exactly what they want. So I want everybody to take out their pen and a piece of paper. I'm sure you already have it out. And I want you to write out the following sentence. I earn whatever that amount is. I earn $200,000, $300,000, $100,000. I don't care what it is. If it's $5, whatever it is that drives you. I earn in present current tense as if it's already happened. You got that? And then below that, like a little outline form, indent one time and put an A. And what I want you to write out is the following sentence. I make X amount of calls per day. The number that you know you need to make your income. I earn, insert your amount here. I make X amount of calls per day. Whatever your thing is, you've got to do to get there. Now, if you sit there and you think about that every single day, and you did that every single day, what would happen? My work here is done. Right? Right? Because if you're thinking the right things and you're doing the right things, you can only create the right results. You cannot think the right things and do the right things and create the wrong results. You can't focus on wealth and success and prosperity and accidentally create struggle. That's just not the way the universe works. That defies the laws of physics. Whatever you think about, whatever you're working on, Emmett Fox said you cannot focus on one thing and accidentally do something else. Whatever you're focused on is what you're going to get. So what you got to do is you got to get so deeply emotionally committed to those two sentences right there on your piece of paper that it drives you every single day. So here's what you do. I'm going to ask you to come up with 10 more minutes a day. 10 more minutes, and I know it's hard. You got a spouse, you got bills, you got kids, you got this, you got that. Sometimes it's hard to find 10 minutes for whom? For ourselves, right? But you got to find it. Because if you don't find that 10 minutes a day, you won't ever find what's written on that sheet of paper. Because that 10 minutes a day has got to be devoted to what I call a quiet time ritual. I wrote out my list. Let me show you what I wrote out on my list. Are we okay on time? I know Pat's rushing everybody. Man, working for free, you think it'd relax on you a little bit. Bald-headed. Pot calling the kettle black. I want you to stop and think about where I was in 1996. A ninth grade dropout, 3-time loser, right? And this is the list I wrote out. Just like the list you wrote out, I just wrote out a longer one. But it's the same thing. You can expand on that list as big as you want to. You get to go as big as you want to go. And when you get finished going big, you get to go bigger if you want. And by the way, don't let folks get in your way doing it while you're busy doing it. Because they'll tell you can't do it, right? Oh, not another one of those. You can't do that, right? There's a reason cliches are cliches. It's because they're true. Misery does indeed love company, right? That's just the bottom line. But that list you had in your hand right now is as powerful as this list right here. This is a list I wrote out in 1996, my third time in the penitentiary, with 7 years left to go, by the way, right? I'm an awesome father to my son. Was I an awesome father then? Nope, my son was 3 years old and I had abandoned him. I didn't have the relationship with my son 16, 17 years ago I have today. I am an educated man. Was that true at the time? 9th grade education, living up in the penitentiary. I own a beautiful mountain home, right? Had never had a home in my life. By the way, if I'd have known how powerful this stuff was, right, and if I'd have known how much maintenance a wood house was at 9,000 feet elevation in Colorado, right, I'd have been up in my cell saying, I have a stucco home. I have a stucco home, right? Because it's a, hey, your mother told you, be careful what you wish for, right? I'm a successful businessman, writer, and public speaker. Not exactly at the time. I'm getting better at it. I'm writing a book on the beaches of Maui. I thought Maui was in the Atlantic Ocean. I didn't know. I had never been anywhere. I read a book by Wayne Dyer. He talked about Maui. I'm like, I'm going to Maui. As long as I'm going there, I got to have a place to live. As long as I'm living there, I might as well write a book. So I told myself, not writing a book on the beaches of Maui. I wrote this book and my next one at my house on the beaches of Maui. Not more than 12 years later, right? I'm wealthy beyond my wildest dreams. At the time, I was making 50 cents a day up in the penitentiary, right? I have an honest, trustworthy, and beautiful wife, right? Some of these take longer than others, I'll just tell you. I'm a man of character, honor, and integrity. Now, folks, I had a better chance of getting struck by lightning, hit by a truck, and win the lottery on the same day than any of those things happened in 1996, right? I wasn't a good shot. I was the longest of long shots, right? Anybody had this conversation with me in 1996 would have said what? You're a madman. Have you lost your mind? You're a 3-time loser convict. You think you're going to go out there and build some successful, wealthy life? Well, let me tell you something. That's what they would have said, and that's what they'll tell you. They will tell you, you can't do that. Have you lost your mind? I was speaking yesterday in Omaha, and a woman came up to me. I did a half-a-day event. She comes up to me, and she says, well, what do you do if your kid's dreams are too big? I said, what? She goes, well, my son thinks he's going to be a professional basketball player. I said, well, maybe he will be. She said, he's short. I said, are you kidding me? There's short white guys in the NBA. Who's that? They're not, you know. How in the hell are you going to tell your 9-year-old kid, control your enthusiasm, son? But this is what they do to us. They will tell you you're crazy. They will tell you you can't do that. Have you lost your ever-loving mind? Well, I'm going to tell you something, folks. You get to dream big. Because I walked out of the penitentiary to homeless shelter 7 years after I wrote that list. And within 5 years, everything on that list had come to pass. I walked out of the penitentiary with a GED. I got a law degree. I got an MBA. I got a beautiful house in Maui. I got a beautiful house here. I got my son when he was 10 years old. Many of you know him. He's been with me every day since. Today he turned 20 years old. He's a remarkable young man. Everything on this list came to pass. How is it possible? Well, thank you. We okay on time? Because I'm feeling it right now. I could be here tomorrow, right? I got to see my kid again. I got to have a place to stay tonight. Am I okay on time? Huh? Okay, because listen, here's the thing. You got to know how that happened. Here's what you need to understand before I tell you specifically how to do it. I've alluded to it with the quiet time ritual. I want to tell you why the quiet time ritual changes everything in your life. That 10 minutes a day that you devote to reviewing your dreams and experiencing emotionally. Here's why. There's a physiological, how many have read The Secret, the Law of Attraction, all that kind of stuff? All of us, right? Well, guess what? It ain't mysterious. It's not existential. It's not a secret. It's common freaking knowledge, and it's a physiological, neurological thing that happens when you have a thought. There's nothing mysterious about it. Here's what happens. When you have a thought, physiologically, when you have a thought, there's an electronic impulse, a little electricity in your brain, right? And that electrical impulse goes into your hypothalamus. When the hypothalamus gets that signal, it secretes a chemical, and that chemical triggers the emotion. And then you experience that emotion and you do something. You take some kind of action. And when you take some kind of action, you get some kind of result, right? So thoughts, physiologically, neurologically, thoughts physiologically trigger the emotions trigger the actions trigger the results, right? TEAR, thoughts, emotions, actions, result. Very simple process. You cannot escape it. So if you see something, the example we used last night with the group over in Patrick's offices, if you see somebody walking down the street with you with a gun in their hand and a knife in this hand, and they're walking towards you and you perceive them as a threat to your family, When you have that electrical impulse goes into your hypothalamus, you don't accidentally create dopamine and go over and give that guy a hug, do you? No, you're going to generate an emotion chemically that's consistent with the thought that this is a threat, so I got to have some adrenaline, right? And when you get adrenaline, what happens? All the blood goes to your big muscles, right? Right here in your quads or right here in your chest, because fight or flight. And that's why sometimes you get so dang mad at your kids, especially if you got 3 or 4. It's like, David, because when you get mad, all the blood physiologically leaves your brain and goes down to the big muscles. And you're left with nothing but instinct and emotion, right? So you're going to take an action consistent with that emotion. I see this guy as a threat. I'm going to have the emotion of adrenaline, of anger, fear, whatever it is, and I'm going to take some action to protect myself and my family. And what's the result going to be, right? Bottom line is. So the emotions and the actions are always triggered by the thoughts. That's the good news. The bad news is that your emotions and your actions neurologically are always triggered by your thoughts, even if the thought is wrong. Even if it's inaccurate. You do not have an alarm system on your brain that says false information, do not interpret emotionally. That's not the way it works. If you think something's true, it generates the emotions as if it's true. And then you do that and you get that. It's that simple. I shared with you, I think a year or two ago, many of you may have been there, about an automobile accident down in Texas. 2 young teenage girls. Horrible car accident. Best friends, right? So horrific was the accident that they could not tell which girl was which. They couldn't identify them. Similar size and shape and hair color, whatever. To add insult to injury, one of the young girls died and one of them lived. They finally get this whole mess sorted out. One gal goes off to the hospital. One gal goes off to the cemetery. One family goes off to the hospital to sit bedside with their baby girl. The other family has to do the unthinkable. Bury their baby daughter. About 3 weeks after the funeral, the girl in the hospital regained consciousness. And they realized they had made a mistake. They had confused the girls still. But ask yourself this simple question. During that 3-week period, were the emotions and the actions of each family based on what was true or what they thought was true? That's how powerful your thoughts are, folks. If you think something's true, it's true. If you think the economy sucks, guess what? You're right. If you think you can't do this, congratulations, you're right. You're right 100% of the time. Because whatever is going on up here, whatever's going on in my peanut-sized brain is going to trigger the emotions that's going to drive my actions and prove myself right. That's why we're all big self-fulfilling prophecies. So whatever you think is going to happen is going to happen. So what do you suppose the implication of that is that if you look at that 2 sentences you have on your sheet of paper, and what if you really thought that was true? If you really believed it was true and that it was possible, not some, make-believe maybe a 1 in a million type of thing, but if you looked at that and when you read, I earn $200,000 a year and I make X amount of calls every day, if you really believed that, you really thought that was true, what do you suppose the emotional connection would be? You'd start feeling like, dang it, I'm feeling good, right? What would your actions be triggered from that emotion? Damn, I'm going out to get this done, right? And then what would the result do? You'd get the result, because if you do what a person who makes $200,000 a year does, and you think what a person who makes $200,000 a year thinks, then what are you going to get? You're going to get the same thing they get, the $200,000. It ain't rocket science. I got 103 IQ, folks. This ain't about rocket science. It's not about being intellectual. It's about being determined and committing yourself to that. So how do you get committed to that list? Every single morning, every day for the rest of life. If you do this one thing, it'll change everything. I tell you, Patrick mentioned the Napoleon Hill Foundation. They called our office and said, this is the Napoleon Hill Foundation. We want to talk to the 51 thought leaders in the world on Napoleon Hill's principles for a new book we're doing and a new CD set. And I said, so 51 people and me? They said, no, you're one of the 51, right? I mean, listen, no one's more surprised by that, right? You don't have to be smart. You just got to understand these basic elements of neurology and physiology. So here's what you do. Every morning the rest of your life, you get up 5 minutes early, 10 minutes early, and you read what you got on that sheet of paper right there. It's what I call a quiet time ritual. It's the one thing that will change everything in your life. And when you read, I earn $200,000, I make X amount of calls every single day. As you read that, I want you to close your eyes and repeat it to yourself a few times, and I want you to experience the emotion of what it feels like when you earn that $200,000. Whatever excitement that's going to give you, whatever peace of mind for you and your family and for your future, I want you to experience that emotion as if it's already happened. Because what happens if we fabricate the thought and generate the emotions, even if it's not true yet. Then it drives the actions. And then the results are guaranteed. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. But you got to review that every single day, the rest of your life. 10 minutes a day. That's all I'm asking for. And by the way, I got mine. This is for you. I'm not here today because I'm getting paid. I'm not here today because I don't have something else to do. I'm here because a man that I love and respect said, you got to come down. It's been a while since you've been here, and you got to let these folks know about this. In just street terms, I come straight up from the streets, folks. I don't come from any ivory tower. But what I'm telling you is I embraced that list. I committed myself to it emotionally. I began to feel that way and do those things, and guess what? I got those things. It ain't rocket science. So I'll conclude with this final little example. When you review your list every single day, at 10 minutes, I earn $200,000 a year. Allow yourself to experience the emotion as if it's already happened, right? Make believe if you have to at first. Experience that emotion. Picture what it's going to look like. Picture what it's going to feel like. And that will drive your behavior throughout the course of the day because of a little thing called cognitive dissonance. If you tell yourself every single morning, I earn $200,000 a year and I make 2 new calls a day, what happens at the end of that day if you don't do those 2 calls? You're going to feel like a fish out of water. That's called cognitive dissonance. It drives human behavior. It's based on the premise that private declarations dictate future actions. If you tell yourself every morning, I'm getting these things, I'm doing these things, and then you don't do it during the course of the day, you will feel like a fish out of water. But what happens if you never told yourself that stuff that morning? You let yourself off the hook. There's nothing to be accountable to. You go to bed, you didn't make the calls, who cares? You never told yourself you would. The quiet time ritual will connect you to your dreams at such an emotional core level that during the course of the day, if you don't do those 2 things, whatever they are, 1 or 2 things, then you're going to feel like a fish out of water. Because that's the only way you can get rid of the anxiety if you've told yourself that you're going to do it, unless there's one other option, and that's to scratch the dream off the list. Don't be accountable to yourself. Let it go. Let another year go by. You know what? Whatever level of excitement and love and passion you have for life today, that's it. You can't wait. It's not going to automatically, you're not going to accidentally get wealthy and happier tomorrow. The only way to change that is go out and do those things every single day. And here's how emotionally connected that you got to get to your dreams. When my son was 3 years old and I had abandoned him and I was in the penitentiary, I wouldn't see him until he was 10 years old. The first thing on my list was I'm an awesome father to my son. And every day I would review that. Every day I would allow myself to experience the emotion as if I was already that father. And 7 years went by and I walked out of the penitentiary in 2003. 6 months later, because his mother was in prison by that time, that's what kind of life this boy had the first 10 years of his life. His mother was in prison when I walked out in 2003, so I got him. I got him when he was 10 years old. And then he and I went to work building a life together. He was a scared, lonely kid, detachment issues, abandonment issues, really overweight, all kind of issues, right? But we built a beautiful life together, me and my boy. An amazing life together. Last year, last August, 12, 13 months ago, came time to take him off to college. I didn't think much about it. I live 2 hours from Denver. It's not a big deal. I wanted to become a man. So I get him in the car one day with his little girlfriend. We drive him up to Denver. And we walk into the dorms, and there's a gal there checking kids off the list as they come in. Checks him off the list. She looks up at us, and she says, mandatory housing meeting, 3 p.m. I said, yes, ma'am, we'll be there. And she said, no, sir. No parents. We want him at 3 p.m. And all of a sudden, it hits me that at 3 p.m., they're taking my little guy. The little guy that 15 years earlier I had devoted my life to while sitting in a prison cell. And then the last 7 or 8 years after I got out, but my life for those 15 years was devoted to my son. And at 3 o'clock, they want to take him away. At 3 o'clock, they want to tell me he's a man, and he's not my little guy anymore. I turned to my son and I said, you know, son, not everybody's college material. I said, I got it pretty good. You know, you can travel with me, you just hang out, you go to college. You've been saying you want to take a year off between high school and college. Maybe that's a good idea, right? Because now all of a sudden I'm getting a little bit of melancholy about them taking my guy away, right? And he kind of laughs, and we go out to Target, and we get all the stuff for his dorm. We come back, we set the dorm up. It's the last time that room was ever clean. He was a teenager, right? About 2:15 that afternoon, we're in the student union having lunch. And I'm sitting there and I'm eating my sandwich and I'm watching my son and his little girlfriend. She's a wonderful, wonderful girl. I mean, already I have fallen in love with her too. And they're sitting there and I'm watching these kids and they ain't got a care in the world. He's happy. He's healthy. He's making good decisions. And he's empowered. He's got a foundation on which to build this amazing life. And I'm sitting there watching these kids. And all of a sudden, I'm thinking, this was the moment I've been waiting for. For 15 years, this is the moment that I'm waiting for. And I'm watching these kids eat and they're giggling. And I just want time to stand still. Just stop. Right there. I don't want another second to tick by. I'm sitting there watching these kids and I ain't saying a word, just watching them, eating my sandwich and just, I'm in a dream. It's perfection. About 2:30, my son says to me, he says, Dad, we got to go. I got this meeting at 3 o'clock. I said, when the hell have you ever been in time on your life? How the hell you got to be there at 3 o'clock? He said, Dad, come on, I don't want to get off on the wrong foot. I said, let me tell you something, boy. Everything I've done for 15 years has been for this moment. You shut up, eat your sandwich, and let me enjoy this. I said, not only do we not have to leave right now, we ain't never got to leave. You and Maddie, you get married right here. You have some kids I won't watch. I'll stay home and take care of them. We can live. There's food here. There's water. There's education for the grandkids. We can live right here in the student union. And my son looks at me and he says, Dad, what in the world is the matter with you? I said, son, this is not just the biggest day of your life. It's the biggest day of my life too. Everything I'm doing for 15 years is about this moment. He says, well, I understand that, Dad, but I really... And I said, okay, get your ass in the car and let's go. We drive across campus and we get down to in front of the dormitory there. And I go to get out of the driver's seat and he goes to get out of the passenger seat. And little Maddie, she goes to step out too. And I said, baby, I said, can you give me 2 minutes with him? I need 2 more minutes. And after 2 minutes from now, he's not my little boy anymore. 2 minutes from now, he belongs to you. He belongs to the world. He's a man. But for 2 more minutes, he's going to be my little boy. So she closed the door and got back in the truck, and I walked around, and my boy is standing there in the back of the truck. And I'm looking at him, this beautiful, beautiful boy. Hair down to his ass, pants sagging, but he's all mine. And I'm looking at this beautiful boy. This boy who was a 3-year-old innocent child that I'd abandoned. This beautiful boy that was 10 years old when I got him, and this beautiful boy that was everything I devoted my life to. And I'm looking at him, and I can't believe he's mine. I can't believe the road that he and I traveled together. For many years separate, but the same road. And for many years together. I put my arms around my son, who any moment was going to become a man, right? I mean, the seconds were ticking. Any moment he's a man. And I put my arms around him like I have 1,000 times because I'm a hugger. My dad was Old Yeller, right? I wanted to be a different dad. I remember when I was in junior high, they said, we're going to read a book called Old Yeller. I said, who the hell wrote a book about my dad? But I was a hugger with my boy. I always have been. And I put my arms around him like I had 1,000 times. And I put my arms around him and I whispered in his ear. I said, son, my greatest wish for you is that one day you will have a son that you love the way I love you. Because that's the only way you're ever going to know how your old man feels right now. And he's kind of squirming for a second. He says, Dad, what is wrong with you today? And I held him back and I put my hands on his shoulders. And I said, son, I get paid by the word, but I don't have the words to tell you what I feel right now. This snuck up on me today. I didn't know this was coming. I had no idea how this day was going to feel. The day that you become a man. And I said, words can't tell you how much I love you, nor can I adequately communicate how proud I am of the man you've become. And suddenly, like somebody threw on a switch, I watched my boy become a man. He quit shuffling his feet. He looked up at me mano a mano. He looked me dead in the eye and he put his hands out on my shoulder. He says, no, Dad, I'm proud of the man you became. And in that moment with my boy, My life was perfect. In that moment with my boy, the way that it felt, the mutual respect and love, the way that it felt with him was perfection. And as I shared with Patrick and Kim and Mike and Julie last night, there's not a moment in my life that will ever get any better than that. Whatever happens from this day forward, nothing will ever match that moment with my boy. But you know what the crazy thing is, folks? The way that it felt in that moment with my son, that perfection, was the exact same way it felt 15 years earlier when I was pretending. That's how bad you got to want your dreams. You got to want your dreams so bad that when it happens, a year, 2 years, or in my case, 15 years later, when it finally happens, the way that you feel when it finally happens is the exact same way you got to feel every morning when you're pretending. That's how bad you got to want it. And when you want it that bad, and you get that deeply emotionally committed to that dream that you wrote down, and what it's going to mean for you and your family and your future, when you get that level of devotion, when you get that level of conviction, when you get that level of emotional connection that it affects every cell of your body, every fraction of a thought you ever have, it's consumed. You're immersed in that dream and that emotion. That's how bad you got to want it. And if you get connected to your dreams every single morning to that degree, what are the odds you're going to go out and do the thing you got to do? They're pretty darn good. And what are the odds you're going to get what you want if you do the thing that you need to do? It's a matter of time, isn't it? Not a matter of if. That's how bad you got to want your dreams. Simple as that. Thoreau said, if we advance confidently in the direction of our dreams and endeavor to live the life we have imagined, we will meet with success unexpected in common hours. I don't think that's just a bunch of fancy words from Thoreau. Advance confidently in the direction of your dreams. Endeavor to live the life you have imagined, and you will meet with success unexpected in common hours. Thank you all so much for your time and attention. It's been my privilege to serve. God bless you all. We'll see you down the road soon. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you all very much. You guys have a wonderful weekend. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.